Thank you. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Um, we are only going to take up maybe 35 minutes of your time. We know everyone's time is very precious. Hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end if there's any pressing questions. So today's presentation, it's going to be myself, Alison. I am located in Canada, in Ontario. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. I'm also a registered nurse and a Zinzino partner. And kicking us off today for the first half of the presentation is going to be Ricardo. And he is located in Portugal. Ricardo has a background in sports and sports management, quite an athlete himself. He has a strong passion for, I think, every paddle sport, or as we call them in Canada, racket sports. One day we'll play tennis together.
Yeah.
Also a volleyball player. We're going to do that together
Yes,
too.
yes.
And he has a very inspiring story that I think will be shared throughout this presentation. So if you would like to begin, I'll hand it over to you, Ricky.
Yeah, thank you, Alison, and good evening, everyone. And just to clarify, the way Alison said and introduced me made it sound like I was like a professional Olympic athlete. Way far, far from that. It's not true. uh, Pretty much an amateur, but in a lot of racket sports. And I do have a big passion for tennis, squash, and maybe a little bit for paddle, but mainly tennis and squash. And it was actually because of squash that I actually had a massive injury. I dislocated my knee. I broke my patella, which is that bone that sits right at the top of your knee, and all my ligaments went. Everything just went off. And I had to have a big surgery, and the doctor pretty much gave me the prognostic after the surgery that I would never be able to do any sports whatsoever for the rest of my life. And for me, it was a big impact because my life has always been about sports, and not being able to do that, it would affect my job because my job was always related to sports, either managing sports facilities or playing sports and coaching people how to play squash and paddle and tennis and all of that. And everything went out of the window. But then I met Zinzino, and the passion that came from Zinzino, it's more about the concept. It was more about the understanding about those layers of information that I was not aware of. And there was a massive eye opener in terms of what health really means. How we made of, and why do we become into a state that we develop so many diseases across the world. And that's pretty much what we are witnessing at the moment. So I will start my presentation. If you just bear with me a moment, because I actually didn't prepare myself that well, but now I'm prepared. There you go. Where is the slide? There you go. So I will start by introducing to this incredible Scandinavian company called Zinzino. Okay. It's a Swedish company, and we are pretty much the pioneers of what is called preventative health and test-based nutrition. And I think Zinzino came about at the right time and at the time that they should exist to make a difference, to make an impact, because the health situation across the globe, it's not great. And when we look at the data provided by the World Health Organization, when we watch the news, when we look into the national health services, just saying that we can't keep it anymore because there's so many people coming through the doors. And that's a true fact. We can't deny. But why are we living in such a technological world where we have great hospitals, we have great investigation centers, we can go to the moon, we're planning on go to Mars, we have electric cars drive without us holding the wheel, but we cannot provide good food to the world population in order for us to have good health. Because the reality is food is one of the components that is contributing to one of the biggest threats to humankind, and that is called chronic inflammation. And inflammation, it's pretty much the byproduct of this massive change that has been happening in the last 60, 70 years when it comes to the food chain, when it comes to the food that we have access, either when you go to the supermarket. And then, of course, the globalization and this capitalist approach where you find fast food in every single corner, and that is not really helping humanity. And one of the other aspects that World Health Organization already shared is that 6.3 billion people are actually deficient of omega-3. Now, why am I talking to you about omega-3? Because omega-3 plays an important role when it comes to regulate how much inflammation we have. Now, chronic inflammation has been a hot topic for a long time. There's a lot of publications, there's a lot of studies, and chronic inflammation is pretty much called the silent killer. It develops within us. We don't know about it until we know about it. And when you know about it, it's through symptoms. Either it could be a back pain, could be a knee pain. That was my understanding of inflammation. But then inflammation is much more than that. And then you come to the conclusion that you go to the doctor, maybe you just went to do a checkup, and the doctor actually identifies something that is not happy with. And then he will ask you, I think we should do further exams. And then guess what? You've discovered that you might have a pulmonary disease, maybe you have cancer, maybe you have a metabolic disorder. But why didn't you find out before? Why did you have to wait, either go to the doctor or to have a severe symptom? There's a lot of studies that talks about the importance of omega-3. But omega-3 doesn't operate alone. It actually needs another fatty acid as important as omega-3, which is called omega-6. And the studies that have been conducted discussing about the importance of having a balanced ratio between those fatty acids, it's enormous. There's so much information. I actually did not know about this. And that's why when I've listened to this the first time, I start putting the dots together. Could this be the reason why I cannot have a much better recovery after my injury? Why is the doctor saying that I can no longer play any sports? So I start putting things together. And all this made sense to me. I don't have access to this type of food anymore. This was 40, 50 years ago. There was food provided by Mother Nature, full of vitamins, full of minerals, fatty acids, fibers. Now all I have is processed, ultra-processed. But even if I don't indulge in this type of foods, I still need to go to the supermarket. And when I go to the supermarket, I find myself surrounded by fruit and vegetables that they no longer look the same. They no longer have the same contents of all the nutrients that I need. And there's loads of studies showing that. There's loads of studies about spinach, about broccoli, saying that the amount of broccoli that we would need to eat today to match a little bit of broccoli 40, 50 years ago, there's no comparison. We would have to eat so much more. So the body is paying the price because we are more and more deficient of key elements. But let's focus on those that really control inflammation, which is omega-6 and omega-3. Both of them, we do not produce them. We need to outsource them through the food chain. Omega-6, it's our inflammation marker. Well, the name says it all. And usually we get it through the red meat, eggs, but then, unfortunately, in today's society, refined vegetable oils, which you're gonna find pretty much in every single food item in a shelf in the supermarket, especially that it comes inside a package. Then, if you decide to go down the microwave foods, processed foods, ultra-processed food, you will find a lot of omega-6. Now, the omega-6 is not the enemy. We need to have it. We just don't need to have it as much. Now, on the other side, we have omega-3. And we need to have a marine source of omega-3. Omega-3 being your anti-inflammation marker. We cannot live without omega-3. We cannot live without oxygen. We cannot live without water. But when you put it in the spectrum of time, each one of them is different. But we all need the three of them. We cannot live without them. But guess what? We can only get omega-3 from a marine source, and usually we get it through wild fatty fish. The majority of the world population now only consumes farm fish. Well, farm fish, they only get fed omega-6. They actually have partially any omega-3. So how are we going to get a marine source of omega-3? And when we look at it, 97% of the world is deficient in omega-3. Now, science is actually saying that we should have a 1-to-1 ratio between those two fatty acids. That's how we should be born. That's how our DNA should be. But science is so caring. They actually say that, hey, you can actually go up to 3-to-1. And once you are in this area, you are in the safety zone. But since the opening of the first supermarkets around the world, the ratios have been changing drastically. And now I can tell you the average around Europe is 15-to-1, and across the world is 25-to-1. But what does that mean? Well, we are, all of us, in the danger zone. And when you have such an imbalance between those two fatty acids, well, it will have a massive impact across your body, from your joints to your muscles, the functionality of all of your organs, your skin, your hair, your brain, everything. Why? Well, because we are all made of cells. And omega-6 and omega-3, they are key components of the cell because they form the cell membrane. And the cell membrane, it's what controls what goes inside the cell. So imagine the cell membrane should be a very healthy membrane. And if it has a nice ratio between 1-to-1, 2-to-1, and 3-to-1 of omega-6 and omega-3, it means that it's a very healthy cell. But what is happening is that the ratios are so high that the higher the ratio, the thicker the membrane. That means you cannot absorb that much in terms of nutrition, and you are not able to release the toxicity out of your cell. We need to go back to the roots. We need to go back in time. We need to go back to the times where we had the 3-to-1 ratio. So we can have a permeable, soft jelly membrane. So all the nutrients can go in and all the waste can go out. We can't change biology. And this is us. We need to go back to that. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is, okay, where am I? Where am I? I can analyze and find out how much fish I eat a week. Is it farm fish? Is it wild fatty fish? If it's wild fatty fish, does it come from a clean ocean? Well, because in nowadays the oceans are totally polluted, heavy metals, microplastics, high levels of mercury. We need to be careful. So we find ourselves trapped against the wall. I do not have access to such an important fatty acid. So the Xeno came about and they introduced to us the possibility of testing ourselves and finding out where we are. What is our ratio? How deficient are we in terms of omega-3? What is the permeability of our membrane? What is the capacity that our cells have to defend from any pathology? And above all, is our diet compromising our health? Am I consuming more of omega-6 than what I should? So the test tells us everything. At the same time, and we launched a gut test around 6-7 weeks ago, and again, pioneers of the first test ever to be released where you can actually analyze your guts through a blood draw. I'm sure that Alison is going to cover a little bit more about the gut test, but this is incredible steps in terms of technology, in terms of science, for us to know ourselves so much better. And by testing constantly in these key areas of our health, including vitamin D, including our sugar levels, those are the 4 tests that we do, we can actually prevent from a lot of accidents to happen. The same way, your car will flash the light when your tires are getting a little bit flat or when your brakes are a little bit low and your engine doesn't have enough oil. It's all about prevention. And that saves you a lot of money. It saves you a lot from any trouble that you might have. The same principle, let's prevent by constantly testing so we know where we are. But we are a Swedish company. We have nothing to do with the entity that actually conducts the analysis of the tests. That is a lab called Vitas in Oslo, Norway. And they are one of the most recognized, reputable labs in the world. And just for you to see the caliber of business partners that they have, we are one of them, but they also have the Olympic Committee. They also have the National Health Service of United Kingdom and other countries, also Cambridge, Oxford, and Harvard universities, amongst others universities and hospitals around the world. They have conducted over 1.5 million tests across the world. And unfortunately, the site is not great. On average, 97% of the world population is failing these tests. Again, this is just matching to what the World Health Organization is already saying. And Keith is spinning the wheel. Keith is showing to us that it doesn't matter where we test. Everyone will fail the tests, unfortunately. And we have tested pretty much all over 140 countries. But one aspect is very important to share with you because you might be thinking already, that's okay because I'm taking a supplement of omega-3. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. But if you are, I can tell you that 20% of those that have been tested, they also failed. And they were already consuming an omega-3 supplement. So why did they fail if they were consuming an omega-3? We gotta ask these questions. We gotta ask these questions. Why is it not working? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna show you how do we fix this problem. And I'm gonna show you a video from Dr. Colin that is gonna show you how we can actually fix that problem. And like always, I always forget to share the sound. So let's go.
Back in 2020, I was working as a research coordinator for 2 global health strategies. And the problem that we were really starting to face and tackle was the fact that the Office of Global Burden had published data which had been shared by the World Health Organization that estimated a 6.3 billion people on planet Earth were living with an omega-3 deficiency. And that's quite profound. As a part of the research strategy team I was in, we started to consider, well, what else can we do? And we looked at supplementation, but the reality is that the evidence, the research evidence around supplementation, well, it was quite damning. We knew there was a systematic review published in 2018 that quantified the area. The outcome of that, the statement, the findings were that most of these supplements, well, they failed to function. So there we were, scratching our heads. How do we fix a global health problem? How do we put back in something that is essential, that needs to be there in order to optimize health? And then, curiously, as these things come about, a good friend of mine called me out of the blue and said, have you ever heard of this Scandinavian company called Zinzino? Now, he was making a personal inquiry. He'd had some health issues over the years, and his doctor over in the United States had recommended this specific company with their specific product and had told him this is the one that works. And I was skeptical. I thought, I'll take a look. It takes no time. Let's see what's going on in this space. Why would it be any different? And the moment I did, I saw 2 profound aspects that were really game-changing. And I recognized it immediately. First of all, the test. The first thing that I saw was that this was a test-based company. But this was actually a company that had aligned with one of the most reputable, distinguished, independent laboratories in the world. And they were the people who were doing the dry blood spot samples for them. This piqued my interest. And then I looked at the product and had that moment of, not eureka, but certainly I recognized immediately the simplicity of the genius. You see, Where omega-3s occur in nature, they are naturally bound to a polyphenol. Polyphenols are another essential aspect, powerful antioxidants of our nutritional health. They function on so many levels within the human biology, within the human organism. And where we find omega-3 in nature, they are bound to these polyphenols, but the essential refining process of fish oil, in order to eliminate those environmental toxins, also separates it from the polyphenol. And so the minute I loaded up the information, looked at the page, and I saw the simplicity of the genius of what Zinzino had done, they'd realigned nature. They'd put the omega-3 back with the polyphenol. And there it was. So immediately I realized that this was something decidedly different. They understood what difference needed to be made. And by applying that simple genius of rebinding the omega-3 to the polyphenol, you now had a fully functional supplement that could meaningfully bring about a change, an alteration, an improvement to your omega-3 status.
Thanks, Ricky. Sorry, it was taking me a second to unmute myself there. So I'm going to take over from here, and I am going to just share my screen with all of you. I think I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see that, my slide? Oh, hang on. Nope, that's not what I want. Slideshow, sorry, there we go. Okay, I think we're in business now. So when Zinzino crossed my path, it was about 2 years ago. And what drew me in was the test that Ricky just talked about. With my background in nursing, I like data. I love science, and I loved the idea of being able to take a test to see where my levels were at. And to be honest, I wanted to test my whole family. So I was very excited about the test. Like Dr. Colin explained, our balance oil, it's not a fish oil. It's so much more than that. Some of us like to call it a Mediterranean diet in a bottle, or oily fish, basically like eating fish in liquid form. And what sets it apart from everything else are those polyphenols that Dr. Colin mentioned. And our balance oil is made up of 60% pure high-grade fish oil from small wild fatty fish. And it's paired with pre-harvest premium extra virgin olives. So it's the polyphenols in these olives that are as close to what we find in nature in actual fish in the wild, that pairs so well with the omega-3 to keep it potent, to keep it fresh, and to keep it so that it gets into your cell membranes, like Ricky explained. That's where we want it. You can see in the bottom of the screen here, there's a little bit of a bar graph. And this was a study that was done in 2010. It's called the Syntef study, and it was comparing our balance oil to other omega-3 products on the market. So we know why other products are not working and people are failing the test, because the polyphenols are lacking. But what this study showed us is just how well our balance oil actually works. So in comparison to other popular omega-3s like krill oil, just a pure concentrated omega-3, or what is probably the longest used omega-3 supplement, cod liver oil, our balance oil it stays bioavailable in the body up to 35 hours. So it makes it through the digestive system into the bloodstream so that it can get into those cell membranes where we need it. Oh, there we go. One of the things that I loved about so I loved the test. And then the thing about the product that made a lot of sense to me was that it's dosed by weight. So I have a daughter. She was 6 when we started Balance Oil. I have a husband. He's about 200 pounds. It didn't make sense to me that someone who was 200 pounds or someone who was 100 pounds would be taking the same dose of Balance Oil or of any omega-3, because our bodies are made up of trillions of cells. So depending on our size, depending on our weight, we may need more or we may need less to feed the cells of our body. So that made a lot of sense to me. Our Balance Oil has the polyphenols in it. It has the omega-3s, EPA, DHA, which are two marine sources of omega-3. There's a little bit of vitamin D that helps with absorption. Any Zinzino product that has a plus beside it, and most of them do, indicates that it's all naturally derived ingredients, something that was very important to me. There's a little bit of vitamin E in it as well as an antioxidant. And you can see here on the bottom, there are some certifications there. Friends of the Sea, Informed Sport. These are really important. Sometimes you just look at a product and you just see them stamped on the bottle, but you don't really pay attention to that. But with so much on the market now and the market being flooded with supplements and products, people can talk a big story, but it's really important to see that these products are backed by these third-party certifiers. That was super important to me. And that's what Informed Sport shows, is that everything we say is in the bottle is what's in the bottle and nothing else. And Informed Sport is also a certification that athletes look to. Those top level athletes, not Ricky, as he pointed out, he's not an Olympian. But they look to that to show that what's in the bottle is all natural and safe for them, because they have to prove, anti-doping testing and the like. So our Balance Oil comes in several flavors. You can see them listed there on the slide. We also have a Balance Oil Premium. Now, the difference here is it has a higher concentration of polyphenols. They're taken from a different source of olive. And if we could put this in all of our Balance Oil, we would, but they're a bit more of a scarce source of olive. And the polyphenols, they're a part of the class of antioxidants. So anyone who is already struggling in any, chronic disease or, maybe has really, really bad inflammation, the premium oil would be very supportive for them, as those polyphenols and omega-3s work together to bring down the inflammation. Now, I love the Ascent Plus Premium for travel. These are our gel caps. It's our Balance Oil inside the gel cap. So they're excellent, like I say, for travel or for people who don't like the oil texture in their mouth. So something that sets our product apart, if you've ever taken an omega-3, whether it's a gel cap or a liquid, and it smelled like fish, tasted like fish, or you had those fish burps afterwards, I'm sorry to tell you that that product has already gone rancid. It was doing nothing for you. So for people who, you'll never find that with any of our Balance Oil products, but some people don't like to have that oil texture in their mouth, and the Ascent capsules are a great alternative for that. I wish my kids could swallow these big gel caps because I do have to fight them sometimes on that oily texture. But they're taking it and they're benefiting from it. We also have a Balance Oil that we call Aqua X. Now, this is formulated a little bit differently, where, as you know, oil floats on water. This is formulated so that it will be water soluble, and you can stir it into water or into a liquid. Some people, for example, who no longer have their gallbladder, which as a nurse is actually pretty common, the amount of gallbladders that I've seen removed, they have a harder time processing fats, and essential fatty acids are fats. So the Aqua X is definitely a product for them. And for the kids too, stirring it into some water helps, or some orange juice. And for our vegan friends, we have a vegan balance oil. So this is derived from algae. So those omega-3s, they're in the algae. The fish, the wild fish, eat the algae, and that's why fish have omega-3s in them. So for people who don't want to eat fish, we have a vegan option for them as well. So as you can see, like Ricky showed us, 97% of people globally are failing their first balance test. They do not have enough omega-3 in their body. So who does this benefit? Well, everyone really, at every stage of life. And when I get to this slide, I always like to start in the very center. Could be because of my background in nursing. I worked on labor and delivery for 12 years. But right at the start, when a baby is growing inside of mom, those omega-3s in the form of DHA are super important for the development of a baby's brain. They're really important to support all of our brains through every stage of life. If I just were to focus on one system of the body or one aspect of the body where omega-3s are beneficial, a baby's brain, all of our brains are made up of 60% fat. I think it's somewhere around 25% of that is omega-3. So a baby, as their brain is developing, if mom's not getting that in her diet, or she's not taking balance oil, the baby's going to pull from mom's supply. It's going to pull from mom's brain. And if you had children and you've had that baby brain, that, or we would call it placenta brain, that sort of fogginess afterwards, you're lacking omega-3. So in childhood, the brain is still developing up until around the age of 25. Omega-3 supports brain development, supports growth, supports the immune system at all ages. It's showing to be very beneficial for reproduction. There's some really interesting science that's showing that people who are having trouble conceiving are low in omega-3. And then as we get older into midlife, around the age of 50, our heart's been pumping for us for 50 years. It's very supportive of our cardiovascular system. And into our older years, our bones, our joints, again, our brain, keeping us sharp. There's health benefits at every stage of life. When I was introduced to Zinzino 2 years ago, I was having a lot of stiffness in my joints and in my hands, and also in my hips. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm 46. These are the perimenopause years. Is this normal? Like, is this just how I'm supposed to feel? When I got started on the balance oil, it was about 3 weeks later, I remember one day just thinking, wow, like I woke up and my hands weren't aching. They just felt great. They felt normal. A couple weeks later, my hips had loosened up. I would get out of bed in the morning and I felt like an old lady. Like my hips were tight, they were sore. And about 4 or 5 weeks on the balance oil, all that inflammation was gone. And I just felt like, I actually felt a little bit younger. Like I was going up the stairs faster. My joints just felt so much better. So these are 18 health claims that are approved by the European Food Safety Authority. Depending on where you are in the world, there's different health claims that we can make because we do have to follow our, regulatory bodies. In Canada, it's the Public Health Agency of Canada that sort of regulates what we can say in terms of health claims. But these three in green, they're universal. It is the top three statements that we can make about omega-3, that they support normal brain function, supports heart function, supports immunity. You can see there's many more here. But honestly, what I love as a partner in Zinzino is when I help someone or when someone gets started on balance oil, it's hearing their story about how it's helped them or how it's gotten rid of a certain symptom or how they feel better in a certain way. And honestly, it's often things that are not on this list. It is what fuels me to want to continue to share this with people. I mean, some of us were on story night on Monday night and we heard some amazing stories about how this is changing people's lives. And that really is what propels me to keep sharing this. So again, I already sort of touched on the certifications that are very important to our products, and becoming more and more important to consumers. Zinzino has done over 1.5 million tests globally. This is a glimpse of some of the countries, just to sort of give you a bit of an overview. And the first number is how many tests we've done in each country. This might be a little bit outdated. The second number is the average result of that first test. So you can see from country to country, it's a little bit different. In Canada, 13 to 1. United States, 22 to 1. Oh, no Portugal in here. Germany, 15 to 1. But what is very common, so every country, culture is different, the diet is different, the sources of food we have are different. But what is very similar in every country is the second test. Canada, 3.3 to 1, United States, 3.5 to 1, Germany, 3.1. So when people get on the balance oil, they get those cell membranes in balance, they get the right ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, bring that inflammation down, we see the same thing from country to country, that it's working. I like this graph as well. This is a little bit more number crunching. And again, that sciencey part of me loves this kind of stuff. This sort of, I don't know what color we call that, peach, coral color, is the first balance test of people who've taken no omega-3s whatsoever, what their ratio is. So that averages at 14 to 1. The middle column in yellow is people who've taken omega-3 products, not balance oil, other products, and what their first test shows. So no one there is in balance, and yet they're taking other omega-3 products. That says a lot. And then the third column in green is people who have used one of our balance oil products, and this is their second test. And all age ranges are showing that people are in balance on their second test. What's most shocking to me on this slide is in that peach-colored column, the children at the top, 0 to 9. Children are being born without enough omega-3. Children are coming into this world already, suffering from that silent inflammation. And this is likely why we're seeing so many more kids being sick at such younger ages, which honestly, it's very sad. So 95% of people taking balance supplements, we can get them back into balance in 4 months. So what we recommend, you take a first test if you want to know where you're at. You choose one of our balance oil products, and 4 to 6 months later, we do a second test to show you that the product works, to show you that you are now in balance or near balance. And the reason we wait 120 days is because when we do that dry blood spot test, we are looking at the cell membrane of your red blood cells. And red blood cells turn over in your body about every 120 days. So we wait those 4 months to make sure that we get all those cell membranes in balance. These are not my personal results. My first test, I was 20 to 1. I wasn't too shocked because once I had learned where the sources of omega-6 and omega-3 were coming from in my diet, I realized I wasn't getting those marine omega-3s. So I wasn't overly shocked that I was at 20 to 1. My second test came back at 4 to 1. And I felt the improvement. I felt so much better. Just within like 3 to 5 weeks, I could feel the change in my levels of inflammation, which was amazing. So reaching balance between omega-6 and omega-3, it's one very important step. I like to call this our sort of flagship, like our mission at Zinzino, is to get people back into balance. Once we get those cell membranes in balance, like Ricky said, anything else we're doing, any food we're eating, any nutrition, any supplement we're taking is going to get into the cell where we need it. So really, to me, it's step one is getting our cells into balance. Now, like Ricky said, our new gut health test is very exciting. It was just launched in October. This is huge, first of its kind globally. Typically in the past, if you wanted to have any idea of what was going on in your gut, or you wanted to look at your microbiome, good bacteria versus bad bacteria, that was being done through stool samples. So that alone makes this a game changer that we're doing it through a dry blood spot test. Now, our gut has been said to be our body's second brain. It holds 70% of our immune system. You may have heard the term the gut-brain axis. There is quite a connection between what's going on in our gut to how we feel, how we perceive things. So when you do our gut health test, there's a questionnaire that goes along with it, which I think is genius. And it asks about your sleep. It asks about your stress level. It asks about your level of activity, because all of these things play a role in the health of your gut. So Zinzino has taken a different look at gut health, not so much about what microbes are in there and how many are in there, but the overall picture of how your gut is functioning. And what we know is that we have to feed our gut. All those microbes, they need to eat. And we have a product called Xenobiotic Plus. It's 8 prebiotic fibers. And this isn't fiber so much for us as it is for those microbes. It's food for the beneficial microbes in our gut. So this is the first step to feeding that gut microbiome so that the good bacteria are thriving and outnumber and take over any bad bacteria that you may have there in the gut. Another product we have at Zinzino is called Extend, which is a multi-immune food supplement. Extend has minerals, it has vitamins, it has beta-glucans. Everything in this product is meant to work synergistically together. What I love about it is, like Ricky was saying, when we're talking about our food, our broccoli doesn't have as much nutrition as it used to. Our oranges don't have as much vitamin C as they used to. So Extend are the micronutrients that we may not be getting from our food. Well, in general, we're not getting from our food, but when you're trying to eat healthy and you're conscious about it, you still may not be hitting all those markers of micronutrients. So for me, I feel like Extend fills in all those gaps in what might be missing from my plate. We have it in Zinzino in most markets, not yet available fully in Canada, what we call our Zinzino Health Protocol. So I view this sort of as 3 pillars of health. We have our balance oil to get our cell membranes in balance, to reduce that inflammation. Then we have step 2 is to restore our gut, because like I said, our gut is, we're learning more and more just how important it is to our immune state, our mental health, our energy. So step 2 is restore the gut. And step 3 is to support everything else through Extend. Now, the Health Protocol Premium includes a 4th product, which is called Viva Plus, and this is by far my favorite of the Zinzino products. Viva is derived from saffron, the spice saffron. It's an all-natural food supplement. It's called a nootropic because it has an effect on your brain naturally to release serotonin and dopamine, which are the feel-good hormones, and melatonin, which helps your circadian rhythm and helps you sleep. I love this product because when I'm feeling overwhelmed, mom, 2 kids, after school, making dinner, kids are loud, and I can feel that just a bit overwhelmed, I take 2 Viva, and within 20 to 30 minutes, I'm calm. I don't feel dopey. I don't feel tired. I don't feel high. I just feel like a calm version of myself. I absolutely love it. I was taking it as needed until recently when a friend, Zinzino partner, reminded me that it had helped her with her hot flashes, which I had been experiencing. And so now I take Zinzino daily. I sleep through the night, and I personally am no longer having that temperature instability. So for me, Viva Plus has been amazing. So I'll skip over that because I kind of already talked on that. We do like to refer to it as a spa for the mind, which I love. When I first heard that, I was like, oh, come on. But now that I take it, I'm like, oh, now I get it. There we go. So here's just a slide to show the extent, I think everything's here, of our products. One thing I love about Zinzino, and it was Dr. Paul Clayton, our chief scientific advisor, I heard him say this, was that we're not a company that's focused on getting more and more and more out onto the market. We're a company that's about making specific targeted products that work for a specific function and that all work together synergistically. And I just love that so much. Oh, what happened there? Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't realize I was going right to that slide next. So I'm going to show you here. It's just a short video. It actually, I think, was made in Canada. The Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada, I believe, put this out. And it sort of gives you a glimpse of two paths. And we have choices in life. We choose what we eat. We choose how we move our body. We choose how we take care of our health. And this is going to show you sort of a side-by-side glimpse at the downstream effect of the choices that we have.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide.
So that concludes my portion of the presentation. I just wanted to circle back to Ricky if you wanted to maybe finish the end of your story, because I think it's has a big impact to how Zinzino helped you. And then if anyone has any questions, we have a few minutes left. And if you have to pop off right now, you can do that as well.
Thank you, Alison, for your explanation. And that final video that you shared, so powerful. And I think maybe don't spend too much time thinking about how being old feels like, because we've never been there and we think that will never come. It's so far, far away. But when it comes, and that if you're not in a healthy state, then it's when we're gonna refer back to the past and we're gonna say, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. So now we are in the right time to actually take some action and make some wise decisions, because we have the tools available that actually can help us to grow older, but with a little bit more grace. Okay. Otherwise, I think the inevitable end of developing a chronic disease, according to the data, it's so, so evident. But anyway, going back to the story, and yes, I fell in love with Zinzino as well. I wanted to get tested. I had 13 to 1 on my first test, and I was kind of shocked because I was already making good food choices throughout my life, but I didn't have that omega-3 component. So there was enough for me to develop that chronic inflammation throughout my body. And that had an impact on my recovery. Well, first it had an impact on my injury, but then it had an impact on my recovery. But after 1 year and a half of consuming the balanced oil products, 5 months later, after my first test, I went down to 3 to 1. And then around 1 year later, I start becoming very active. And today, well, I do everything. I'm a Les Mills instructor, which means that I teach body balance, I teach body pump, I play tennis, I play squash, I play paddle, I run, I do beach volley, I do everything. So nothing stops me from anything. But thanks to Zinzino, I've managed to get my health back, my mobility back, my agility back, my flexibility back, and I just love it. So, but above all as well is the energy levels, because now I understand the biology side of things. We need to have healthy cells in order to absorb the nutrients, so the health is the cell is healthy. And one cell is healthy, and you multiply that by 37 trillion cells, you have a healthy body. And that's what we need to have. We just need to give enough time to regenerate those red blood cells to be back into balance, which we actually managed to do in 5 months with the balance oil. So my recommendation to everyone, first step, get tested. Don't guess. Test. Identify the true reality of yourself. And if you do your test and you actually realize that you come with a 15, 20, 25 to 1, and I'm actually brave enough to say 30, 35, 40, 50, 60, 70, because we have seen all of that, then ask yourself, why don't I know this? Why has this information been taken away from me? Why don't I have access to this information at the medical level? But now you have it. And now you know, because please feel free to go into your computer, open the platforms available to you now. You have ChatGPT, you have Grok, you have Google, and ask the simple question, what is the ideal ratio between omega-6 and omega-3? This is not an Alison and Ricky story. This is a global information provided to you all. And then ask a simple question, what is the impact of having a high ratio? And then you will see the list. Cardiovascular, immune disorders, cancer, everything is there. So then you will probably ask yourself, what is my ratio? I want to know. Get tested. That's all I can say. So from my part, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope it was beneficial. Feel free to go back to the person that invited you to be here today and ask as many questions as you might need in order to make your decision. So from me, thank you so much.
Thank you.